Welcome back to the Morbidium podcast, where the dead don't rest, the truth decays, and the unanswered refuse to stay silent. This is Stephanie, and with me is your most revered mistress of madness, Allie. Welcome, guys, to season 2. Okay, y'all. Today's episode is one where we need to take a collective breath before we start because this story hits real hard. It's tragic, it's infuriating, and honestly, the more you learn, the worse it gets. We're talking about the death of a 4-month-old baby boy, Elijah Hugh Wedel, in Salina, Kansas, and his mom's fight to keep his story alive. Before we get into timelines and charges and all the cold legal stuff, we want to talk about who Elijah was to fulfill our mission statement because he was more than just a headline, more than a case.
Yeah, and that matters because when stories like this get told, especially the ones involving kids, they can quickly turn into numbers, dates, and charges. And that's not fair. Not to him, not to his family. So let's slow it down for a second.
By all accounts, Elijah radiated love. He radiated joy. Everyone who met him talked about his infectious laughter and his big, constant smile. He was one of those babies who lit up a room without even trying, just happy to be here, happy to be loved.
And apparently, love was kind of his whole thing. He adored people, no limits, and no hesitation.
And it didn't stop there. Elijah loved bath time. His mom, Randi, said he loved splashing in the water. It brought him so much joy. It was something really small, but to him, it was the best part of the day. And unfortunately, those bath moments are some of the only memories mom has to cling to forever.
And I mean, he was just 4 months old, but he was already showing this strong, determined little personality. He was playful, bright, and by all accounts, incredibly curious. I mean, he was already trying to stand and trying to crawl. He was trying to explore everything around him, even when at times you could see he was clearly frustrated.
Mom says he didn't cry much. Tears were rare. And when they did come, it was usually just because he wanted her attention.
Which honestly, same. Respect.
The bond between Elijah and his mother was obvious to everyone who saw them together. It was just that kind of connection that doesn't need words, just pure love, pure devotion, and you could feel it.
And that's the part that really hits because he was only here for 4 months, but in that short time, his personality shone bright. Not dim, not fleeting, bright, like he arrived exactly as he was meant to be.
Elijah's family has described him as a divine gift. And no matter what happens legally, no matter how this case unfolds, his memory holds a permanent place in their hearts.
As it should, always. And with that in mind, knowing who Elijah was, knowing how loved he was, let's talk about what happened next, because understanding his life makes the injustice of his death even harder to accept.
Now, before we really dive deep into today's episode, I want to take a moment and say something that feels important to acknowledge right away. Because this story didn't come from curiosity or entertainment. This episode exists because a mother refuses to let her son be forgotten. And because what happened to Elijah should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. What makes this case especially difficult is that the tragedy didn't end with his death. The way the system has handled and what followed has only deepened the harm.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where at first glance you think you're looking at something tragic, but maybe explainable. Maybe a medical emergency or an awful accident that nobody could have predicted. But the more you sit with it, the more you dig into the details, the clearer it becomes that this wasn't about confusion or complexity. It was about delays, avoidance, and a complete lack of urgency when it mattered most.
In April of 2024, Randi needed childcare while she worked two jobs. She supported the family, and Elijah was left in the care of a woman named Amanda Venardi, who was 42 years old at the time. Amanda was not a stranger to this family. She was considered a family friend, someone who was connected to Elijah's father and Elijah's grandmother on his father's side.
And that context is really important because this wasn't a rushed decision or a random babysitter pulled from an app. This was someone they believed that they knew and trusted enough that they even ran a background check before leaving Elijah in her care.
And this is where mom, grandma, and great grandma have expressed big feelings because the background check came back clean, but only because Amanda had given them a fake last name. They wouldn't learn her real identity until after she was arrested months later.
And I do want to mention here that Randy has been very clear that when she first met Amanda, she didn't look or act like what people see in like the mugshot picture. There were no obvious signs of heavy drug use, nothing that raised immediate alarm, and nothing that made her feel like her baby was in danger.
Amanda also stayed in constant communication while she was babysitting. She would call, she would text Randi at work, she would give updates throughout the day, what Elijah ate, when he slept, every diaper change, the smallest details. She was communicating.
And Randy has said that that level of attentiveness is what made her trust Amanda so much. It felt responsible, reassuring, and caring, and it made her believe that Elijah was with someone in somewhere that he was safe.
That trust would be completely shattered. On April 25th, 2024, Elijah was in Amanda Venardi's care at her home in Salina, Kansas. At some point that day, a neighbor, not the babysitter, not Amanda, called 911.
And when first responders arrived, they found Elijah face down in his crib and unresponsive, which obviously immediately raised serious concern.
Elijah was rushed to the hospital in Salina, and Randi dropped everything and ran to be with her son.
And when she walked into that hospital, I mean, what she was faced with is something no parent would ever forget. She would later describe entering the room and seeing 7 nurses surrounding 4-month-old Elijah, all working desperately to keep him breathing.
He was so small, hooked up to machines, barely recognizable. She said he didn't even look like her baby anymore.
Doctors had to restart Elijah's heart 4 times, and each time they asked Randy whether she wanted to keep trying.
And every time she said yes, because when it's your child, hope doesn't disappear just because things look impossible.
Then, at around 4 a.m. on April 26th, which would be the day Elijah died, doctors told her that his kidneys were failing and that dialysis was an option, but an option that came with serious risks. And at that point, Randy has said that it was clear that his son was already gone.
So initially, doctors believed Elijah had died from an intestinal disease. And Randi has sent us paperwork corroborating this. Um, but it didn't sit right with her. He had been incredibly healthy up until this point. And babies with digestive disorders do not present as healthy for their whole 4 months of life and then just one day crash. So,
Yeah, it's like you said, he was healthy, and the medical records do show that. He'd even just had his 4-month checkup. Labs were done, and everything had came back normal. If there'd been anything wrong, anything at all, It would have been known about and flagged immediately.
So Randi pushed for answers. She asked questions, and she insisted that lab tests be sent to Kansas City for further analysis because something about that situation felt very wrong to her.
And months later, the autopsy results would finally show what had actually happened, and that's when everything changed.
The autopsy revealed that Elijah had methamphetamines in his system at the time of his death.
Randi has said she prayed it was an accident because the alternative, that someone would knowingly harm her baby, that was impossible to accept.
It took 8 months for Amanda Venardi to be arrested. During that time, she was still free. She was still using drugs, and she was deteriorating further.
Then in January, she was booked into Saline County Jail and charged with aggravated child endangerment and multiple drug-related offences, not homicide and not murder.
Her bond was set at $30,000, and during sentencing, she admitted to the judge that she had used meth that morning with Elijah's other grandmother, the one on his father's side, while Elijah was present.
Yet, despite that admission, despite drugs and pipes being found in the home, and despite Elijah being medically healthy just days earlier, she was never charged appropriately.
Amanda instead was ordered into drug treatment at Miracles Inc. in Wichita, but she later walked away from the facility.
Officials discovered she was missing after she failed to attend a class on March 4th.
Randi wasn't even notified right away. We use the Vine system here in the US, and it took 2 weeks before Vine notified her via text message that this monster had escaped.
And unsurprisingly, Randi was terrified and desperate for accountability, so she went public. She contacted the media and posted in local groups until attention was forced onto the case.
And it worked. U.S. Marshals eventually became involved. Amanda was caught, but the escape charge was later dropped.
And today, Amanda is housed in a minimum security women's prison in Topeka, Kansas, where she's allowed to work outside the facility.
She has trustee privileges, and it's been 2 years since Elijah died, and Randi still has not received his autopsy report or the police records.
I mean, she wasn't even consulted about plea deals or included in meaningful discussions about the case.
And through all of it, she hasn't stopped fighting.
Because, like we said earlier, Elijah was deeply loved, and he deserves justice, and we should all keep saying his name.
I think what sticks with me the most after going through all of this isn't just the facts, because those are awful enough on their own. It's the way the case feels unfinished, not in a dramatic to be continued way. They haven't told her they're going to be pursuing further charges. To my knowledge, Randi sent me something that said her last communication with the police said her son's autopsy report would be released in September of 2025. It is now mid-February 2026, and she does not have that autopsy report for her baby boy. It's just not a real-world sense. The family has just been left hanging and waiting while the system has moved on to the next big case.
Yeah, and it really just leaves you with a weird hollow feeling. Like when you realize, yeah, the paperwork is technically done, but nothing actually feels resolved. It's, it's one of them things where, someone says, well, that's just how the system works. And you're just sat there thinking, right, but if this is how it works, then it's working terribly.
Absolutely. I was mortified when Randi, Randy's mother, and Randy's grandmother, all three, they've had no advocates there in that area reach out to them so that they can continue their mission, so that they can find out why this autopsy report hasn't been released. I keep coming back to Randi because everything she did, she did everything she was supposed to do. She did it all the way it was supposed to have been done. And she trusted someone who presented themselves as safe. She checked that person's background. She stayed in contact. She followed up when things didn't feel right. Randi pushed for answers when doctors tried to give her a neat explanation about a gastrointestinal disorder. She did not sit quietly, and she does not sit quietly.
Yet still, somehow, she's the one left chasing paperwork, chasing reports, chasing basic respect. And the person responsible manages to dodge any meaningful consequences at every turn. That's the part that really twists the knife.
It's infuriating, especially when you think about how often people say, well, why didn't the parent notice sooner? We saw a lot of that when we posted the article on the Facebook page. She should have known. No, no, no. You do not get to come in and say you should have known. I should be able to leave my child with any other human on the face of this earth and reasonably expect that that person is not going to harm them. Now, is that something we all do? No, because we try to take precautions. And Randi did all of it. She did it exactly right. And even if she didn't listen to her instincts that one time, it was because somebody convinced her she was overreacting. And we see this time and time again.
I mean, we really do. It's something women, especially mothers, hear constantly. I mean, I know I have, and I've got no doubt you have too. You raise the slightest concern, you say something is worrying you, or you're not sure about something, and the response you get isn't, okay, let's act on that. It's, you're being dramatic, you're imagining things, you're worrying too much. And then when something awful does happen, the blame just circles straight back.
And another thing is that I don't think people talk enough about how manipulative and deceptive someone has to be to pull this off. Amanda wasn't chaotic in a way that set off alarms. She was attentive. She was malicious. She wanted that money from babysitting so she could purchase her drugs. And she was willing to lie and be deceptive. She knew exactly how to do all of those things so that she could get her fix, and a child died because of it.
I mean, yeah, I know personally this is something that when I'm researching and writing up these cases, I do struggle with, because there's this stereotype that danger should be loud and obvious and it should act a certain way. But it doesn't. And the more cases we do, the more we see this, which is why we do this. We want to get that message out there that the people you think are safe aren't always who they seem to be. Some of the most dangerous people are the ones who blend in enough to be trusted. And that doesn't make Randy or anyone else naive. It makes people like Amanda calculated.
And then the court process just compounds the harm. There were there were so many delays, postponed hearings, plea deals made without the victim's family even being consulted, learning about an escape by text message weeks later. And it does need to be said that Randi now has another child, that she is afraid for this child's life because of this. And she needs to be notified immediately so she can take her baby and go into hiding, or she can do whatever her safety plan is. She needs the opportunity to implement her own safety plan.
I mean, yeah, you look at the way everything was handled, almost laughable. Like, it's really hard to not make light of that situation simply because if you don't find light in it, it is so hard to hear and so heavy that you kind of lose faith in the entire justice system. Because honestly, what else can happen when you're seeing this level of incompetence?
No, you either laugh or you scream. And sometimes you do both at the same time. But joking aside, this is why we share stories like this. This is why Elijah's story matters. Not to sensationalize it, not to exploit a family's grief, but to say his life counted, even 4 months of life. He wasn't just a tragedy. He was loved, he was happy, he was a healthy baby who should still be here today.
And I think about that a lot. The life he didn't get. First steps, first words, all of the normal, I mean, air quotes, boring first milestones that parents dream about and take photos of and complain about later. All of that was stolen away.
And his mom is still fighting, still pushing, still refusing to let the system quietly close the book and move on.
Which takes a kind of strength I don't think people appreciate until they're forced to find it themselves.
We're going to keep following Elijah's case, and we'll update you if and when anything changes. But more than that, we want to say his name and make sure his story doesn't disappear into a filing cabinet.
Yeah, because justice shouldn't depend on how loud you can shout or how much attention you can force. And yet, far too often, it does.
And my final statement here, I had to redo this several times, and I feel so passionately. The silence and inertia surrounding the Elijah Wedel case are not just disappointing, they're infuriating. A 4-month-old child is dead, and yet meaningful, transparent action from law enforcement has been absent. This is not a cold case buried by time. This was a recent, preventable tragedy involving an infant who cannot speak for himself. And when authorities fail to move with urgency in cases involving the death of a child, it sends a message that accountability is optional, that some lives receive less priority, and the public's right to answer is negotiable. And it erodes trust, not through rumor or criticism, but through inaction. Families and communities deserve more than vague reassurances and procedural delays. They deserve diligence, transparency, and a clear demonstration that the life of a child demands relentless pursuit of the truth. And anything less than that is a blatant failure of duty.